Okay, let's say we had to name these 6 compounds shown below. The first thing that you would want to do is to determine whether the compound is ionic or if it is molecular. And if it is ionic, follow ionic rules of naming. If it is molecular, follow the molecular rules. Okay, starting with number 1, we see the first element is cobalt. Well, cobalt is a metal, and cobalt is a metal with more than one possible charge. Okay, we're going to use ionic rules, and so ionic rules say, well, write the name of the first one just like it's spelled in the periodic table, and if it has more than one possible charge, use a Roman numeral. Alright, well, we got to figure out the Roman numeral. To do that, we use the negative ion, and phosphate is -3, and so 2 times a -3 gives you a net of -6. The phosphates are contributing -6 to this compound. Okay, we don't know what the cobalt charge is, let's say, we'll call it X, but 3 times X has to equal +6 so that the positives cancel out the negatives. Therefore, this cobalt, there's 3 of them, that X must be +2. So we know that the cobalt is +2. Therefore, it gets a Roman numeral of 2. So cobalt 2, and then we just name phosphate just like it's spelled on the polyatomic ion chart. Okay, moving on. S2O3. Well, S, sulfur, is a nonmetal. Therefore, we're going to follow the nonmetal rules, which means use prefixes. So we have 2 sulfurs. So that is di, and then we write sulfur, just like it's spelled in the periodic table. The first one's always spelled exactly the same. And then we have 3 oxygens, and so that's going to be trioxide. Alright, so disulfur trioxide. Notice that the last one gets an "ide" ending. Okay, number 3, zinc is a metal. And we look at the periodic table, and zinc only has one possible charge. That means it doesn't need a Roman numeral. So we just write zinc, exactly how it's spelled in the periodic table. Then we look at SO4, that is sulfate. It's off the polyatomic ion chart. So we write sulfate. Number 4, calcium. We look at calcium. Calcium is always +2. It's a metal. Therefore, we follow the ionic rule. So we write calcium. And then we look up NO2 on our polyatomic ion chart, and it is nitrite. So calcium nitrite. No Roman numeral is required because it's always +2. Okay, number 5 is a tricky one, and the reason that it's tricky is because there are very few positive polyatomic ions, but this NH4 right here, that is a polyatomic ion, and since it's a polyatomic ion, we follow the ion rules. And so we would name it ammonium, just like it's spelled on the ion chart, ammonium, and then we name the nitrate, which is another polyatomic ion. This one kind of looks like it could be a molecular compound, but remember with molecular compounds like in number 2, they're all binary, the ones that we're naming, so there's only 2 things in the formula, whereas this has 1, 2, 3, 4 different things in the formula. Okay, number 6. Okay, nitrogen is a nonmetal, and there's 2 things, so it's a binary molecular compound, so we're going to name it using the molecular compound rules, utilizing prefixes. So N2, which would be di, and then you would just spell nitrogen, okay, exactly like it's spelled in the periodic table, and then you would write the oxygen, but you got to say how many there are with prefixes, and tetra is the prefix, tetra, but you drop the A, and you just go tetroxide. So dinitrogen tetroxide. Okay, that's pretty much it. Just remember, before you start writing the name, identify whether it's ionic or molecular, and then follow the rules for each.